Hello, 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 and welcome back, everybody, to Part-Time Gamers Podcast, Episode 3 of Dragonflight. Woo! What's going on, Frosty and Win?
We made it to the third episode. We haven't been canceled yet. This is amazing.
Goes longer than any D&D session I've ever hosted. Oh, sorry. It's such a... Oh, see? Right there. Oh. I'm wearing it.
Well, hopefully you don't low roll that much in your loot.
Oh, my God.
He hasn't.
I don't. No.
Yeah.
So
Mr. Grief
I just got to get this out of the way, everybody. The luck has pressed through once again. I opened up my vault. Frosty's hanging out with me. I'm sharing my screen. I was like, hey, Frosty, let's go and see what's in my vault. And I walk up to the vault, open it up, and I wind up getting the ring of Filial Vial or whatever it is. It's the one that procs with Grief Torch. And I was like, 405, here it is. And Frosty's just sitting there shaking his head going, I don't get your luck, man.
I still haven't gotten my 4 set. So, our luck is not the same.
God. Oh,
yeah.
I can't wait to go into that, actually, because my 4 set changed my whole rotation. And on that topic, actually, for everybody that's listening, we're going to be going into how to be a better raider and also how to separate a good raid leader from I guess you could put it, poor raid leader or a lacking raid leader.
A group you want to dip from real quick.
Yeah, we're straight up outie. But before we get into the whole raid leading spectrum of things, we just wanted to kind of stay on the topic of raiding, because we've been doing this for long enough now where we got some bragging rights. And also, we've been through this together, actually, from the very beginning. That's actually how I met both Frosty and Win, is when I started off in Shadowlands and I got into, community with them. And then we built this community. We all raided together. So thinking back on it, it blows my mind looking back at where we were to what we've become now. Like we all started off completely oblivious, just, oh my God, struggling. How do we min-max, and still trying to learn how to min-max, how to make the best of our builds. And
what is min-maxing?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what even is that? And taking advantage of certain add-ons and being able to do that. And also just getting rapport back from other raiders and having that atmosphere of having an approachable community and friends that were better and players that were better and give us some feedback. And looking back, like, Win, I just kind of want to start this off because I have a memory from you.
Oh, no.
That I admire, and I will hold this true, is I remember way back in the day when we were in a community previous to Play It Forward, you were playing a monk and we were on Castle Nathria. And Frosty, you were there, I believe.
I think
I remember correctly.
I was definitely in a lot of runs with YouTube, so probably I'll remember this.
Yeah. And when we were doing Stone Legion Generals, and I remember that you were struggling to meet the DPS check for heroic. It wasn't normal, it was heroic.
It was normal.
And I remember
it was
normal. I thought it was heroic.
Because I had like very recently maxed my monk. Like max leveled it.
Yes. Okay. No, that checks. And I remember that you vocalized. You were honest. You came out and you went, I'm just not hitting that DPS check. I don't know what's going wrong. And then shout out to Lilin, I remember speaking up and going, hey guys, can we just take like a 10-minute break? Can I take Win really quick? And can we step out for 10 to 15 minutes and then we'll come back? I see what she's doing wrong and I want to go over a few things with her. And he popped out with you out of voice chat. You guys disappeared. You came back and your DPS jumped. And this is not an exaggeration. Like 2K, and at the time 2K was like, oh my God, that's such a huge jump.
Yeah, we were like maxing out at like 5K at the time.
Yeah, it went from 4 to 6.
Yeah. So do you remember that? I'm just curious.
I do remember that. Yeah, a very defining moment in my WoW career. And one of the reasons why I've invested in the current community and stick around in the new community is because it's such, I remember how much it helped me and impacted me in my gameplay and how much it promoted that feeling of community and that the good vibes, of it's just altogether positive of you're getting better at the game. So you feel good and you're also developing relationships. So that feels good too. Right.
Yes. And the favorite part that I had about that too is the entire raid paused for you two.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't just you two. Like we didn't do another poll. Like we chilled. We enjoyed. Like we were just hanging out. I think we did another transmog walk while we were waiting, and then
at
you
the
guys
same
popped
time,
back in.
it was a teaching group, and I think that's an important distinction of like that's the great part of being part of those groups is you have the opportunity for that as opposed to like a push group that's gonna want to just like
Push
rapid fire.
Yeah, exactly. And they expect you to know those things. And this was the kind of environment where you could learn those kind of things. And seeing that and seeing your evolution, Frosty, you're another beautiful example, man. You are the one of my other favorite examples. For everybody that doesn't know, Frosty came in as just a pug during, I think it was Heroic Lady Minerva around that time.
It was Minerva. Yep, that was the first interaction.
So Frosty's a gamer. Frosty's a gamer.
I was new to WoW pretty much, so it was my first time like actually hardcore raiding a tier. Hardcore, I would say. I mean, I was trying to get AOTC. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Well, before then, you were a Mythic Dungeon pretty much only player, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you came in and started raiding, and you were mainly relying on pug runs, and then you joined us, and then you started progressing with us, and then Frosty ended up actually being recruited as a raid leader, and moi ended up teaching him a raid leading guide, which we'll kind of touch on later on. And then he ended up Frosty, I'll never forget this. You ended up becoming like the icon of the community of a farm run. Like you had a raid assist, Spinksy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still run with Spinks. I've been pushing heroic with him this tier too. Yeah.
And on top of that, you had a group that respected you. And you were very well respected, but you got to that. Like you weren't, again, we didn't
start there. That's true.
Exactly. Like you never really raided. And then he was pugging for his first expansion into raiding and then became a heroic farm raid leader. So both of your stories just blow my mind. And Win, if I'm correct, that was your first expansion coming into WoW, right? Was Castle Nether? Or is it BFA?
It was my first expansion, like doing more than leveling and key binding more than just my main 6 damaging abilities. So
nice.
And then also on top of that, for me, Shadowlands, like I played WoW in BC, Vanilla, and Wrath, but I never did anything more once when I hit max level. Like maybe I did a few dungeons, but like I didn't raid. I think I tried doing Sunwell once and I was like, nope, I'm out. And then Shadowlands was the first time I ever took WoW seriously. So like, and then now I'm running community. I'm trying to show people how to be a better raider and a better raid leader. So like seeing your evolutions and ours, like we wanted to kind of talk about that and the trek we took to get there, the things that we learned through on that path. And I want to ask the both of you before we kind of talk about maybe the specifics of that. Like, what was the one main thing that you can look back on and go, like, that was huge? Like that's got to be one of the most vital things I learned as becoming a raider is like, I could take this way. Like it could be a mentality thing. It could be even a very specific, mechanic or a utility you use, like anything. Like what's something that you could think of that you could be like, oh my God, I'm so glad I learned that or that I experienced that. Like, is there anything that sticks out to you?
Go ahead, Frosty.
Man, this is an open-ended
I know
question,
this is a doozy. Man. I'm sorry.
I got
one that I'm really excited about if you want me to jump into it.
I could make something up here. I mean, I do think it's largely a mentality thing, honestly. The difference between the tiers where I feel like I raid really well and like I will parse well and like be good in the fights and stuff, and the ones where I just fall out and I don't care and like don't really progress or anything. Like it's literally just like, how much do you love the act of raiding and how much do you enjoy the people that you raid with makes the biggest difference for me. Like when we were in Castle Nathria, I loved every fight. I loved every single fight of Castle Nathria except for maybe Sludge Fist because I couldn't use momentum. But other than that, like, and there was like a good group of people that were like consistently coming back, and it was the same people. Like both of you were out there like every week. Like all of the other friends that we were playing with were there every week. And it was just like that was the motivating factor for me. That just like it didn't matter if I was good or making mistakes or not, like to some extent, because we were patient with each other. We made mistakes.
Yes.
We had times when our DPS was low, like not even referencing the win thing that you talked about. Like I had one of those where I was just like, I was using the wrong talents and like really bad talents for the fight, like objectively horrible. And someone pointed it out to me. And then I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. I should go and change this. And then I went and changed it and I didn't know how to do the play style. So I still sucked, but then I learned that play style over the next week. And I came back the next week and I was like, now I'm like 1K better. Okay, good. So just like, yeah, it is a mentality thing. It's like, how much do you love raiding? How much of yourself, of your own focus do you want to put into it? Because if you're lazy, like if you're not invested in it for your own enjoyment, you're not going to be good. And that's it.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do have to say, I don't know how you raid lead or ever raid led while doing the momentum build. Like, how do you see? Like, I'm thinking about what my screen looks like when I'm doing momentum, which is like you're staring at the floor, you're staring at the sky, you're like looking up the boss's ass, like you know, like. Or
if you're on Sencard, you're flying off a ledge. Sorry.
You know, that's a really good point. I mean,
how do you see what's going on?
Oh man, you know. I don't really know how else to say this, but I had just like played momentum so religiously and so consistently that it, like, no matter, I think this is true of any build, like any talent build, like for probably any class, like if you just have the muscle memory where you're not thinking about it anymore, then it doesn't take up any mind space. Like I can, and if anything, the fact that I'm constantly moving and looking all directions kind of helped me see everything.
Yeah.
Like I'm not just facing the boss the whole time. I'm facing all 360. So maybe it was a benefit. I don't know.
Okay. So remind me of what the topic is right now, because now I'm just
okay,
like,
hold on.
Okay, repeat the question again for you.
No, I was saying that going from when you got into WoW to now, what was the difference between pretty much when you started that you think that you learned that was like a major wow, I've learned this, or that developed you to be a better raider? Like what was that moment that you had, that experience that you had? If you don't mind, I can get mine out of the way, or if you got one.
No, I want to go.
Let's go. I'm ready to hear it.
It's the same thing that people say about a lot of things. Where like, oh, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. It's the same thing with raiding, where if you're always the one at the top of the damage meters, always the one, like by a lot, and always the one that has all of the advice. Okay, and this is different when you're in a community where you're helping and you're helping teach others. But if you're in a raid where you're like a tier above everyone else, you're in the wrong raid, right? You're never going to get better. That's kind of a ceiling for yourself. And
I love that.
That's where, like, when I first was in the community and raided with Frosty's team, I was towards the lower end of the damage meters, of the mechanics, of all of this. I was brand new to it, and that was a good place for me, because I would look at logs and I would look at other people's damage, especially people that played the same class as me, aka Spinksy at the time. And I would look at his damage and go, okay, what is he pressing all the time? You know, what is his talent build? What are all these things? And refine my own skills accordingly. And that leads into my next point of like, no one is going to make you a better player besides yourself.
Yes.
So you have to invest in yourself. You have to want to get better and do it yourself.
Yep.
Because people can give you advice, people can reach out to you, but you're never going to get better unless you make that step yourself.
Yes. No, absolutely. Frosty actually put it off recording in a great way too, is self-awareness. Self-awareness is a great, probably one of the most important attributes a raider can have. Being self-aware, and I'm not saying self-aware like that can be Frosty, you put it perfectly. It's like being self-aware of what am I doing wrong? And that's the way you put it. Like, where can I improve? And I love that so much. Just to kind of take both of the things that you both said, my experience coming into WoW and from when I began to where I am now. And the big factor that clicked in my head was that when I started off, I actually, believe it or not, I almost quit WoW when I got into Shadowlands, because I got to max level with the want to finally experience raiding. And I was joining so many pug groups and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to do these things. And I, though, went out of my way and watched every YouTube video. I watched everything. And I mean everything. I did my homework. I took notes. I remember writing things down, typing things down, taking notes, but no one would take me because I didn't have what you would say the resume to show that like I know enough to go into it. And on top of that, I was looking for help. I went everywhere looking for help, which is actually one of the major reasons why this community was created and why I wanted to create this community with you and the few others, is because I couldn't find that. And eventually I found people with a like-minded mindset. And that was a huge like savior, because I was this close to quitting WoW. I couldn't get into raids. I couldn't get that experience, and no one wanted to teach me. And I had to actively look for that. And they are out there. I just, at that time though, it was very tough. It was brand new content. Everybody wanted to progress. Everybody wanted to, let's go get that gear. I want to, get the experience.
Everyone wants to progress or be carried, right? It's such a cultural thing in WoW of like, oh, you're not 5 out of 10 mythic. No, I'm not inviting you to my normal run. Right? Like it's just like
people don't give each other chances in pug groups like at all.
No.
I mean, not to derail into Mythic Plus, but it's like sort of a similar thing where like if you're doing like
it's a similar mindset.
Yeah. If you're listing a pug group for like a 15 key or something and someone applies who they've done every single key on a 14, like most of the time, I would bet that person's getting declined. But realistically, someone has to be the first 15, right? And they've proven themselves on everything else up to that. Like as a community of gamers, people are a little too harsh with pugs, especially if you're clearly motivated and want to learn and want to improve. There's a little room for more lenience. And
we're not jumping on the people that is what they're here to do. That's like why they're in WoW. They want to do that. But it's also so frustrating that the stigma is that the majority of them, that's the mindset that they've been cultured with. Like that's kind of, and I hate to bash on it, that is the majority of the group, where that's why I love what we do here and why people get so happy about coming into this community, is because we give them that opportunity and we give them those chances, and we're trying to show them good habits. And something that the both of you mentioned is talent trees, like being shown how to design your talent tree and why certain things in your talent tree are important. And one of the things that we were discussing before we were even in this recording, I did a stream on it about Arcane Mage, and I said it myself, you guys both said it too, is that a lot of people don't, especially with this new one, and it's a good and bad thing, is that you can go now onto Wowhead and Icy Veins and you can copy talent trees and just paste them right into your talent tree now. And then you go, boom, there's the build. And it's the most top recommended build. But what a lot of people aren't doing that I've been noticing, and it was explicitly clear when I was showing someone my AoE Frost Mage, and I was sharing my screen, and I had probably about, I want to say 12 people going over this. And they're like, well, why is this proccing? Why is your Frost Orb that's a minute cooldown only like 20-second cooldown? That makes no sense. I'm like, well, that's because of my passives that I have in my talent tree. And I was like, if you guys got to go in there and read not the abilities, like not just the abilities, you need to read your passives. You wouldn't believe the information you can get to show the how certain abilities proc off each other, and the value of a passive has on an ability. Thus why that ability is so vital in a rotation. What's your take on that?
I mean, I have a take from at least the Havoc Demon Hunter perspective, which Win probably shares.
Perfect.
But Win plays more classes than me, so maybe you can give more detail. So I'd say this is actually a pretty interesting tier for this, just because of how much variety there is in the talent trees, and like how much optimization you can make. So
I love it.
My two very quick takes on this is like, one, like there is a lot of different optimization you can do, but the play style that you have to internalize and have like the muscle memory for can be very vastly different, and switching between those in the middle of the raid can be really taxing on you like mentally, because you do have to then like kind of quickly relearn like, what am I supposed to be doing, when do I hold this cooldown, and then also thinking of how to do that for the next boss fight. It's like, when do I pop this specific combo of things that is now only possible in this new talent build? Maybe I have to hold that for this phase, maybe I have to like hold damage for a little bit. So those sorts of things are like, you can't really learn that without like putting in the reps on that specific build.
Yes.
And that takes time. So I'd say anyone who's like copying builds from Wowhead or like anything, or Warcraft logs or anything like that, don't expect to just like instantly double your damage because you're doing that. Like you also have to like practice it and get it internalized. And then the only other point I'd say to that extent is like, this is kind of just me being me again. If you're very, very comfortable with one talent build, you're going to outperform on that than you would on the more optimal talent build that you never play. Like,
yeah,
I'm always going to be playing momentum, even if it's not good for the boss, because I will do better.
No, actually, I'm glad that you said that, because really quickly what I was going to say is that sometimes you need to get those reps in and learn your rotation before you start making other talent builds. Learn how to play the build that you're doing before you start flipping back and forth, because you need to understand. Because if you can learn to play, like, good example, my Death Knight, they're single target and AoE, but they're the same. I'm going to be using majority of the same abilities. Learn how to use those abilities and how they're being applied and how it works before you start making different builds, because you're just going to inevitably hurt yourself because you're not maximizing, you're not getting efficiency down, you're not learning that rotation to its fullest before you start flipping it. Sorry, Wynn.
No, it's fine.
No, go on.
I experienced this on my Evoker.
On what class?
So
Evoker?
Evoker, my Devastation Evoker. So Dream mains Evoker. And so my Evoker is my alt. So I like have, gotten a lot of advice from him along the way. And we were in a community run, and when we got to council, he whispered, he said, "Oh, are you not using the council build?" And I was like, "Oh, what does that mean?" He's like, "Oh, it's really good for this boss or for this, encounter." And I was like, "Okay, let me go quick, get it from Wowhead and start using it." But it goes back to what Frosty was saying, is it introduced a new ability that I had never used before. That then complicated the play style just a little bit. And I definitely did not perform the way that I wanted to. But then the next time I did, because then I practiced on it. And the other thing I wanted to say is that, like, switching between builds, I have a couple of different raid builds, like for specific encounters. And along the way, I've like changed a few of my keybinds, especially with my Demon Hunter, changed a few of my keybinds. No. And then when we got to Dathion Heroic, I was like, oh, I'm going to this build again that I had used in, 2 weeks. And then my keybinds were in different spots, and was like Vengeful retreated off the platform. And it was just,
it's the Demon Hunter's worst nightmare.
Yeah. that Vengeful retreat and that Fell Rush to just hit the edge just enough that you can't get back on. You're up. Like right here.
And then and your meta is no longer in vision. Like you LOS'd yourself. Oh, I hate when that happens. Yeah.
That's
I'm pretty sure that was the kill, actually. It was horribly
Same thing happened to me on Razagath. I usually have two uses of Death's Advance, which is I don't get knocked back. And Razagath, you get knocked back. And I literally was just, I pressed it once. And just like you were saying before, Frosty, muscle memory, when you're raid leading and you just know your abilities. I pressed it again. I went, foomp, and I went, what? Oh.
That's never happened to me before.
Ooh. No grief torch for me.
Just for everyone else.
Yeah. Actually, and there's some tech on that. I have the trinket Storm Eater's Boon. And it's really great to drop when Razagath is doing that knockback, because it roots you for, I think, 10 seconds, which is usually very annoying as a DH. But like, as long as you get your max stacks of momentum, then you can stand in melee range of the boss and just keep DPSing while everyone else gets shot back. It's really great.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. I just got that trinket actually this week, so I'm excited to use that.
You were saying that too. That's awesome. I didn't know that. That's really cool. Oh my god, we're gonna talk more about that after the podcast. I actually want to hear more about this.
But we should.
Sorry, but back onto it though. Going back to the talent trees and the abilities that come with them, and then also learning your rotations. Also, another big thing, and this for everybody that's listening, and we've been saying this in the community quite often, is also knowing. Sorry, I'm laughing because I'm thinking back to all the times that I'm just like, guys, you got to go and look and see what your class has to bring as defenses and utilities to these boss fights. It's not just about knowing your rotation, it's also knowing about how to survive. And when you added something to this as well, is the ABCs with this as well.
Absolutely.
So knowing what?
ABCs?
Absolutely.
What?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Always be casting.
Always
be casting. Like there are times I go back in Warcraft logs and I'm seeing people with uptime of 50, 60%. And I'm like, dude, there's 40% of the time you're literally not doing anything. Like you're just, you're not doing anything.
It's a trap that I think casters fall into a lot because they're like, well, I can't cast because I need to move for this mechanic. But it's like,
exactly.
What are the things you can be pressing? Can you refresh dots? Yes, your dot is still on the boss, but maybe you can refresh it and then you don't have to use a global later, right?
Even healers in between healing, dot. That tiny dot, you wouldn't believe. But yeah, no, you're.
And as a frost mage, right? Your what is it? The icicles ability,
brain freeze thing or whatever that pops up.
Well, you're talking about your icicles and flurry, maybe. There's flurry,
like
there's
you have
icicles,
instant
there's
cast.
orb, there's blizzard. Yeah,
there may be. Again, like with your rotation, it might not be the ideal time to use that ability. But if you have to move, it's better than casting nothing, right?
You know, and this gets me to a point that you said, Win, and you, like, I mean, I do this, but you also mentioned this, and I love this, is that one of the big habits that people have and raiders have that they've never been told, and I think that everybody needs to be reminded at some point, is that just because a phase is coming up where oh, this is a great time where the boss takes increased damage, I should save my cooldown for maybe 30 seconds until that hits. In some cases, yes, it's very rare cases, but when your ability comes off cooldown, you should be popping that every second. Maximize your damage. Yes, a phase might be coming up where you do more damage, but it's vital to stay on top of your rotation. Pop those cooldowns. Don't be holding something like a great example. I play DK. I have Army of the Dead. When that comes up, I pop that. I don't sit there sitting on that, waiting for that for 30 seconds. If I'm in a raid boss fight, that's getting popped the second.
Unless there's an ad phase, right? There's specific situations where like you want to hold it. But again, if you're going to lose an additional time of being able to press that ability, you don't want to hold it, right?
Exactly.
Like if the boss is going to die in 5 minutes and you've got a 2-minute cooldown on something, right? You want to be pressing it so you can get your 6 times of pressing it.
Not 6
times.
It was a 2-minute.
4 times? Yeah.
Like that Army of the Dead, I actually, during Razagath, I can pop it in the beginning. I can actually pop it on ad phase, believe it or not, and get it still on that third platform because I know my rotation going back to the talents. I know that my Death Coil and Festering Strikes, as I'm using my cooldowns, bring that cooldown of Army of the Dead that's normally an 8-minute cooldown down to like maybe a 2.5-minute cooldown if I'm staying in my rotation. And that's why I will pop it, believe it or not, actually during the ad phase, because I know I'm going to get it back for third platform and I'll get it back midway through the final platform. And if I was holding on to it, I would be losing one round of that and I wouldn't be getting through that ad phase quicker. I wouldn't be getting to that boss fight. It really amounts up. So and in the long run, that's where it makes sense.
There's like, even to just drop some quick math, like there's, if it's a difference of like having a major cooldown used 2 times versus 3 times in a fight, it would take an improvement on both of those times of like a 50% increased damage to be able to make that worth it, right? pretty much no raid boss has like a 50% increased damage phase. Like there are some exceptions, but that's huge. Like if you could just get another usage of it, like that would be so much better. Okay, math time over.
I think Anduin would have been one of those examples, right, where he had his increased damage taken phase.
Yes, absolutely yes. That was the one time where I did hold on to Army of the Dead until I got enough haste for my other abilities to start proccing, to be able to know, okay, now I can use it at the beginning of the fight, and I know I'm going to get it back midway through that other fight, and it wound up paying off.
I had the same thing with meta. Like there was a point in the expansion at which I could meta on pull and get it back because it was like a 2.5, almost 3 minutes. But that brings up another really good point of like, I know some people get frustrated wiping to bosses repeatedly, but the other way that you can look at that is bettering your understanding of when to use your cooldowns and when to use your defensives.
Yes.
Right. I have said this multiple times where like, I actually really appreciate and like when I have to really prog a boss, because I always end up parsing better on it because I understand it better. We've pulled it so many times and I've gotten my rotation on that boss down a lot better. I know when to use my defensives. I know when to move. I know when to pop things. And I actually appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's also having that ability to go out, discuss and talk amongst other people that have that same mindset, that they're doing the same thing. Like you're all trying to be better. So also surrounding yourself with that kind of similar mindset really makes that difference. That's why I actually love also you two, and why we're here is because we all have that same mindset. I got to also say though, on top of that too, with my rotation, just to kind of add into this next quick topic I want to touch on before we go into raid leading, is that like I just got my 4-piece set to kind of touch on this topic, and it's now making me use an ability I would never use unless it was an AoE. Now I'm using it every time it comes off cooldown because it increased not only my pet's haste and damage, but my pet increased my haste and damage. And this ability was only an ability that I would use to spread my disease, my festering strikes when there was multiple AoE targets. Now in a single target fight, I would have a different talent tree. Now I don't, because I stay with this AoE talent tree, because when I pop that AoE ability that spreads my diseases to multiple targets, it affects my ghoul and me and increase my damage. And I'm actually now doing more damage than I would with my single target. And it's all because I read, I understood it, and it doesn't tell you on Wowhead or Icy Veins. I had to read and think, and from getting used to my rotation, getting used to my build, I was like, oh, okay, so now I'm going to have to implement this in here. Now it's starting to pop up on the guides, but like that's all about understanding and knowing your own things. And on top of that too, I got to say that taking all of this and like your mentality, your mindset, coming to where we are, how you applied your add-ons, like looking at talent trees and how you're reevaluating those talent trees. It like listening to the two of you, it's just so surreal knowing where you guys came from and hearing the two of you right now. Like it's so surreal just seeing how far we've come and how we're applying all these things. Like for those that are watching that are still new or trying to improve, like I hope you're taking a lot from this, that like
there is hope. Be
willing to make those. yes, there is.
You'll get your AOTC.
Like, just to kind of give you guys, it's a mindset, it's a mentality, finding people that will encourage that mindset and mentality of always be willing to improve, be willing to make those mistakes, always looking on how to improve yourself. Like me, Frosty, Win, we all utilize like different weak auras. Win was literally just talking about before this and Win, going back again to where you started till now, like how you're now building your own weak auras, which I haven't fully done, but you're getting to that point now. You're also watching your replays on like Warcraft logs. We're going on Warcraft logs and looking at your parses. And then one thing that I am obsessed about, and it's in my raid leading guide, one of the main topics in my raid leading guide that I talk about, but it's also good for raiders, is learning to use your adventurer's guide. When you're going into a raid, especially if you're new, I highly, I cannot tell you the value of the raid leading guide. I mean, the raid leading guide, sorry, the adventures guide. Because if you go in the adventures guide and you go to the raid and you click on a boss, it tells you for each boss, what's a tank mechanic? What's a healing mechanic? What is interruptible? What is a magic dispellable ability? Like you can go in there and they got little symbols next to the abilities and you can click on the abilities. And for those that are raid leaders, you can go in there, shift left click that ability and it puts it right into the chat box and you can hit that enter button and everybody in the raid can see it. And I love that. I can't tell you how many times being a raid leader that I've been like, guys, like I'm going to go back to Castle Nathria for a second. There was a group soak for Sun King. And it nuked us
Ember Blast.
So many times.
Yes, yeah. I remember Ember Blast. I had so much fun with that.
People wouldn't move it in. And I was like, guys, and I remember
it's easy to be selfish there.
What?
It's easy to be selfish there. Well, and it's like, you, especially in pug groups, you like run in and then you look around and you're like, nobody else is in here. Well, I'm not dying for this person. Get the fuck out.
Exactly. And you know what? There's a great boss that is this exact same ability. And it's the Count.
With the hammers, right? Molten Hammer. Yeah.
Yes, Molten Hammer. Frosty, man, you still a raid leader at heart. I swear.
I gotta learn that. If I need to tell people what's wiping us, I will. Even if I'm just a pug, I'm gonna do it.
Well, and that's a thing where, like, I definitely think you're not going to behave the same way in a pug as you are in a consistent group. Where,
absolutely.
Like, if you're in a pug and you might get kicked if you die early, you're going to be a lot more conscious of that than you are in like a consistent group where it's like you're being asked to do mechanics. And like, if you do mechanics right, you're going to be helpful to the raid as a whole, which is the truth no matter what, but definitely a different perspective.
But no, this is actually great. I'm very happy that you brought this up because that is the mentality. Like, you know, if you're going to die repeatedly, but if you don't want to die. So you want to perform well so you don't get kicked. And I got to say, though, that it also comes down to the raid leader also. And this is something that I have my raid leading guide that I love. And I've applied this to every raid I host. And it's a great mentality I love, and I teach this to my raid leaders. Frosty, I even taught this to you when you were raid leading.
It's a well-written guide. Go check it out.
Thank you. I love it.
I love it.
Maybe I'll even link it. Thank you. But it's every boss you can really, in my mind, you can say, what are the top 3 mechanics that should be prioritized? And being a raid leader, especially in a pug run, if people are performing bad, you kick them. And you want to give them an incentive of, hey, you could need to perform if you don't want to get kicked. But you also need to be the raid leader that even in a pug run to go, hey, guys, before we approach this fight, just be aware of this, and this. That way, you have a justificated point, at least in my mind and in my raids, that I've gone, listen, I told you what you needed to look out for. I made it abundantly clear. Plus, I am DBM 2.0. I'm calling these things out. There should be no reason why you are missing this. But like, I really love the idea that every raid boss has at least 3 mechanics that you could say like Taros. Okay, like I'm gonna just summarize. What are the top 3 mechanics that you could say as a raid leader that this raid needs to be aware of? Well, you got your Rock Blast Soak, Awaken Earth. And then also the tank mechanic that destroys the pillars. Those 3 things are probably, in my mind, the top 3 most important. The tank needs to destroy those pillars. Those pillars need to be positioned correctly, and that soak needs to be soaked.
And
everything
for the healers,
else,
right? Healers knowing that a bunch of damage is coming out.
But that falls in as one of the top 3 priorities. That falls into that. You see what I'm getting at? And that's why I love that mindset. And as a raider, you can even take that away. Like, what are the top 3 things that I need to take mind of so you don't overwhelm yourself? Because that's a big problem that I've noticed being a raid leader, that a lot of people, especially in pugs, you'll get a raid leader be like, sorry, I just need to give a quick example. All right, we're in Razagast, so we're going to need to drop these 3 pools behind us, make sure that you get pushed into them and that you don't get blown off the edge. Also, remember that we're going to be dealing with sparks. Make sure you interrupt your sparks. Also, on top of that, too, make sure that you watch out for lightning blast, and then we're going to be jumping to the next platform. We're going to have to deal with ads. Make sure that you crush those ads. Then we move through those ads. We're going to be jumping to the next platform, and they're going down everything. You're like, I mean,
raiders lose focus, right?
No.
If an explanation is too long, people just tune it out, or they don't remember the first thing that was said. And like, especially early in progressing a fight, if they haven't experienced it, they're not listening, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
there's sort of feel like an easy way you can approach this as a raider and even a raid leader is like there's a priority order of mechanics. There are things that wipe the raid instantly, and then there are things that will kill an individual player, and then there are things that make your life difficult but are recoverable. The first one is the highest priority. Like if you're missing the rock blasts or something, like everyone dies. Something else where it's just like, oh, like I got sucked in by the cyclone on Dathia and I got launched off the edge. You died, no one else dies. Problem, but costs you a B-res. The other things are like you're being messy, like your positioning's bad, or like you're running marks and spreading marks through other people. Like that's bad, but it's like recoverable. So if you only have to focus on a few things, make it those first two, like just things that kill people instantly. Those are the worst.
Yes. And that's something that I find also in pug runs. There are people that will die. And let me make this explicitly clear. This is something that actually I got super infuriated about with Razgeth when I was saying I was pugging for 7 hours that one night. There was one run that I dipped because the raid leader was, in my opinion, the reason why we were not progressing. People were performing, but he was blaming people for dying, but it was because of his explanation and the way that he was like, just position them behind us, make sure we only have one behind us, and then, but left it at that. Like position the other two away. And it's like it was the first time. It was like a lot of people's first experience. Like they had 7 out of 8. Some people were like, this is my first time, but they were pumping DPS. But like he was just positioned to the side, like where to the side, and then you would just kick him, like just being like, no, you didn't position it far enough away. And other people made the mistake. And that one person that got it, that positioned it wrong, that hadn't had that opportunity to position it right, it was his first time doing it wrong, and he got kicked. And I'm like, dude, like, put down a marker. Like he did. That was the other thing. He didn't even put down markers to like give them some example of where. Like I'm like, dude, what the hell, man? And like other popping B-res. That was another thing that he did. He popped a B-res on a DPS. In my personal,
probably his friend.
I always say, hold. What?
It was his friend.
Probably his friend.
Yeah, always.
It probably was. Always save a B-res for the tank. Priority tank. If you need it, healer. Do not use it on DPS unless you need to meet a DPS check, in my opinion. That's kind of just my quick thing. But like, those are good habits. But like, what are good and bad habits? I guess I just want to ask the both of you before I keep rambling on of a good and bad raid leader.
Yeah. Oh, well, I can jump into it quick first, Win. So I know we both have thoughts on this. So my thing of like this was why I became a raid leader, is because I had pugged for so long. And I saw so many things that were inefficient and like leading to wipes and leading to poor group morale and just like preventing people from progressing. And I had a bit of an ego and I was like, I can do this better. And then I started doing it and I sucked at first. And it's not easy by any means, but like I tried to go into it with an open mindset of like, what things was I doing wrong? What things could I be doing better each time? And like so the specific things that I would mention, there's a fine line to strike, and I think this is probably the biggest one, is just between being too patient and being too efficient and cutthroat. Like that's sort of a balancing act you always have to do, because like on one end, and it depends on what your goal is. If it's a learning run, this is different. If it's a progression farm run, this is also different, right? But like in general, I think you have to find that balance of like,
but there's still a fine line
for both of those
different
it's
mindsets.
Never one side or the other. Like it cannot be. Like there is that fine line of like, okay, this person has like fucked up the same mechanic 3 times and pretty much we're wiping because of that. Okay, sorry, come back next week, like remove that person. If it's like a pushing run. But the people who are like, if you die P1, you're kicked instantly. That is not worth it, because then you're going to spend how much time in queue refilling and waiting for another pug and pugging. It's a 50% chance that person's going to do the same thing, right? So like there's sort of this like, how much can you keep going and like have faith in your players to improve, and how much are you doing as the raid leader to give them the opportunity to improve? Because if you're not giving that opportunity, they're never going to get better, and you're not going to progress with that group you have. So I think that's sort of my 2-step guide of like how to deal with your raiders as a raid leader is like, one, if people are fucking up, give them the opportunity to improve and give them a short amount of time to prove that. And then if they do not do that, then remove them. And that was sort of my approach to it. So I don't know. What's your take on that, or Win?
Um, yeah, I concur. I definitely think that there are ways that the raid leader can encourage growth, but ultimately growth is up to the individual, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it goes back to the
yes.
mindset again that we were talking about, right?
Really.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing. And like as you play with people more and more, you get to understand the way they play and their mindset, and you kind of just automatically know, like within a specific group of people, which ones have the ability to push and which ones don't, right?
Mm-hmm. I love
Mm-hmm.
that. And I agree with that. Like one thing that I was trying to say, and we had this talk before, but like, oh God, I'm trying to say this without sounding egotistical, but I am. But like a lot of people, like a great example when we did our pug run, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, and you were tanking for us. And people would come in and just, we would pug through, and we were just the progression we were making. And I asked you guys before we were recording, I was like, what separates me and why people say like, Sen, you're such a good raid leader, and it encourages them to keep coming back compared to these other people that are just like, dude, I can't tell you how many times I've been told, and again, not trying to sound egotistical, but like that have told me like, Sen, I love coming to your runs. Even people that do prog runs and heroic runs that are ahead of us keep coming back and raiding with us. They just love the mentality that we have as community. It's not just me, it's also you guys. Don't get me wrong. But like that I have as a raid leader, like what's that difference? Like because I don't, I even said it before we were recording. I was like, I don't know how to explain what I do differently compared to others that makes it, I guess, a more successful run. I don't know how to put it other than that. Like, I want to say that probably it would come down to, I guess, my mentality and I think I like to have charisma. I like to enjoy ourselves, but I feel like I've earned the respect of the different raiders when I approach in and go, okay, when we approach this fight, I like to have fun. I like to encourage, I guess, a good morale is the best way that
you have a plus 3 to charisma.
Yeah. It's about more than just killing the bosses at that point, right? It's about community. It's about engagement, right? That's what I think is sets some people above others, is the ability for them to draw people in and encourage them to participate, vocally as well. That I think really makes people want to come back.
I guess that is actually kind of the biggest difference of like, even the, apart from the raid stuff that I was saying, like if you're someone who encourages community and you're sort of, if you're keeping morale up, having like engaging with the raiders and people are enjoying their time, not just killing things, like there's a way you can be.
It's both, right?
It is both.
It's the two. Cause
yeah. So
you could do one or the other and it can still be an okay experience, but not that next level, right?
But that's what gets people coming back and forming a community is if you have both. And so I think that, I guess that's
what were both those things again? Sorry, just to summarize.
Really killing bosses, right? And then community and engagement, right?
Got you. Okay. Yeah, no, I like that because that kind of does summarize it up, because I feel like that when I'm in there, my mentality is that ultimately it's a game. Like, yes, but we are here to progress, but it is a game. We're here to escape from life. We're here to enjoy ourselves. And I think that's very important. But at the same time, we are here to progress. And I want to make sure that while we're progressing, though, I don't want that mentality being the headliner. I don't want that mentality reflecting how I raid lead. And I guess listening to the both of you, that's something that I do subconsciously, is that yes, ultimately in the back of my head, before we approach each fight, I am thinking of the mechanics, the top 3 priority mechanics, what needs to be done, separating groups, odds and evens, checking my everything. But I don't show that. I don't reflect that. When we're playing and we're enjoying ourselves, we're laughing, we're having fun, we're cracking jokes. But once we get there, I mean, for anybody that hasn't raided with me, and for those that have, me, like I'll sit there and be like, all right, hush it up. All right, so what do we need to focus on? Here are the things, please let me just get this out. Okay, what else? Have I forgotten anything? Or is there anything that I forgot about before we go in? Okay, we have addressed everything. Good. All right, let's go. And then we go in, and while we're doing it, I'll be counting down, I'll be doing my things, but we'll still be cracking jokes in between. We'll still be laughing. Wind will be sliding off the edge.
Yeah, but you make a good point about focusing up, right? Like it's good to be able to joke around and have a good time because that's why we're all there, right? But there is a time to focus, and like between bosses, and I think that's another good sign of a raid leader is promoting and allowing that community input and jovial atmosphere between bosses is like that's the time to interact and and all that. But then when it gets to boss, focusing up, respecting the raid leader, right, and their voice and getting things done.
So just to kind of like put this all together, I think that the message that we're trying to say, or the message that we're trying to give to you guys, is that constantly as a raider, try to improve. Frosty, going back to the one thing that you said that I've always loved and that I'm actually going to recite again is I think this can all come down to one trait, one attribute, in my opinion. And Frosty, like you said, self-awareness. Self-awareness is huge. Being self-aware of how can I improve the way that you, here's another thing that my last tip to everyone, and both of you can comment on this, is the way you speak to people is how you're going to be how you're going to be talked to back, and the way that you're also going to receive input and just also morale. The way there's so many people that don't realize the way that they're coming off to their fellow raider or how the raid leader is coming off to everyone else. Literally just how you speak, be self-aware. Coming back to Frosty, be self-aware and don't be afraid to ask questions. And if you can't ask questions, you can't ask, your fellow raiders or who you're raiding with, where you're going wrong, or get good feedback. I mean, if it's a pug run, you're probably not going to get 9 times out of 10. Well, not 9 times out of 10, but 50-50. You probably won't get the responses you're looking for. But find a community, find people. Like, they're out there. We're not the only community, although I want to be. But I mean, come join us, play it forward. Come look us up.
There's the ego.
They're out there. Yeah. But like, they're out there. Go find someone and find what compliments you. And then go look up those guys. Those guys are out there. They're everywhere. And take a little time. Don't hesitate to go read. Go through your talent trees. You wouldn't believe the information that's there because it is there. You can read those things. And I can tell you now, if you go look up these things, ask about add-ons, what weakers can help your class out specifically. There's healer, mouse over macros. Oh my God, don't even get me into macros. There's macros out there that can help you. I'm not going to go into that. But Weakeras, yes. Oh, yeah. Then there's Warcraft logs for if you want to get a little bit more advanced. I'm not going to go too much into that. But there's a lot of utilities and tools out there. And by asking, you won't know until you ask. And the one thing I say in every raid, and you can hold me true to this, I say this every single raid, the only stupid question you can ask is the one you don't ask.
That's false.
Ask them. Okay. All right, fine.
I'm just going to say one word. I'm a critter. There we go. Stupid questions exist.
Yeah, that's fair.
Can I get PI'd as a druid healer or a paladin healer? And I'm like, how to break a raid leader? I'm a critter. Anyway, but yes. So anyway, though, as a raid leader, though, go look up those tools. Those tools are there. And then also, as we were listing, the habits of a good and bad raid leader. And again, it really comes down to just self-awareness. Are you being self-aware when joining under a raid leader? Is that raid leader being self-aware of the composition, explaining the fights generally, especially in a pug run? Are they telling you generally what's needed? And are they utilizing their add-ons to see what the fuck is going wrong? I can't tell you how many times when a pug leader is just like, who used that B-res? Who pulled? Who dispelled that wrong? Who died first? And it's like, dude, use your add-ons, man. You got them.
The resources are out there for everyone to self-improve. Yeah.
So use them, guys. Go use those resources, take advantage of them, and find the people that are going to make you better.
Yes.
Especially if you're top of the boards, you can always have something to learn. There's always something to learn. But anyway, is there anything else you guys want to add?
Oh, I only have my favorite thing to add, unless Win has something.
What's that?
No.
Oh, I know, it's
coming.
I know it's coming. Do it.
Stay frosty.
Keep winning.
Send it. Oh, that was
perfect.
I'm so proud of you.
That's amazing.
Oh. Amazing.
But you said I could have been talking shit about you to you.
No, but
You
you
know I
come
do that
straight to my
too.
face though, and you say it like
I
a
do.
boss. All
I
right,
come straight on your face too.
that's what she said. God damn it,
Clip
Frosty.
it.
Oh,
Clip it.
Oh no, it's clipped.
fuck. It's done.